Story outline for YouTube narration. Title: I was paid to distract him at the gala so my team could rob him blind, but he caught me, and now he's proposing a deal that involves a ring. Write a long cinematic emotional storytelling script in simple, fluent English for a YouTube narration video. The story must strictly follow the provided title and remain fully aligned with its theme. Focus on emotionally compelling central characters whose strength appears through influence, emotional resilience, leadership, authority, decision-making, or psychological depth. Include a strong romantic counterpart when relevant. Naturally include themes that fit the title, such as romance, betrayal, danger, class conflict, mystery, obsession, or emotional struggle, without forcing unnecessary elements. Begin with a powerful psychological hook within the first lines that creates curiosity, tension, or emotional stakes. Clearly show what is at risk emotionally or relationally. Maintain engagement through natural tension buildup, escalating stakes, meaningful conflict, and curiosity gaps. Avoid repetitive forced hooks. Use a mature cinematic Western narration style. Write in short voiceover-friendly paragraphs. Keep dialogue minimal and impactful, mainly at emotional turning points. Avoid explicit adult content while preserving strong emotional impact. Structure: 5 connected parts. Hook: emotional build-up, conflict escalation, dramatic twist, emotionally meaningful payoff. The ending may be satisfying, bittersweet, or thought-provoking. Ensure consistent tone and smooth continuity. Clear emotional stakes. No unrelated subplots beyond the title focus. Natural emotional pacing. Workflow. First, provide a 5-part outline based strictly on the title. Wait for my instruction before writing each part. After each part, ask, ready for next part? If no title is given, ask for it first. Don't give me dot. In story. Here is the 5-part outline based strictly on your title. Story title: I was paid to distract him at the gala so my team could rob him blind, but he caught me, and now he's proposing a deal that involves a ring. Characters: Alara, the protagonist, a skilled, high-end distraction artist. Prickly, intelligent, haunted by a past she's trying to outrun. Her strength lies in her psychological resilience and her ability to read people. Lucian Thorne, the mark, a powerful, enigmatic billionaire with a quiet, intense authority. He doesn't need to shout to command a room. His strength is in his stillness and his mind. He sees through facades because he wears one himself. Marcus, Alara's handler, cold, professional, and views her as a tool. He represents the chains of her past. Outline. Part 1. The Gilded Cage. We open with Alara inside the opulent chaos of the gala. She is executing her mission perfectly. A brush of a hand here, a whispered misdirection there. Her target is Lucian Thorne, a man known for his impenetrable focus. The hook is the immediate tension. She's playing a dangerous game of cat and mouse in a room full of predators. The stakes are her freedom and a massive payday that promises to buy her a new life. Part 2. The Stillness Before the Storm. Alara finally gets close to Lucian, initiating her carefully planned distraction. But instead of being captivated, he is unnervingly present. He sees her, not as an admirer or a socialite, but as an anomaly. He doesn't take the bait. He quietly dismantles her act with a few calm, pointed observations. Just as the tension peaks, alarms blare. Her team has been caught. Alara's world collapses. She's trapped, surrounded, with nowhere to run. Part 3. The Devil's Bargain. In a private study away from the chaos of the failed heist, Alara awaits her fate. Lucian enters, holding the ring she was supposed to be a decoy for. Instead of calling the police, he reveals he knows everything about her, her team, her debt to Marcus. He offers a deal. He will erase her debt and set her free, but in return, she must wear the ring and play the role of his fiancée. The conflict escalates from a physical threat to a psychological and emotional prison. Part 4. The Man Behind the Mask. As the fake engagement progresses, Alara begins to see the cracks in Lucian's armor. His authority isn't born of greed, but of a desperate need to control a world that once betrayed him. She sees the loneliness behind his power. The lines blur. A moment of genuine connection, a shared secret, a flash of vulnerability, makes the deal feel less like a prison and more like a choice. Then, Marcus resurfaces, threatening to expose the truth and destroy them both, forcing a final confrontation. Part 5. The Price of the Truth. Lucian must choose: protect his empire or protect Alara. Alara must choose: run from the danger, as she always has, or stand her ground for something real. The climax isn't a gunfight, but a decisive show of power. Lucian dismantles Marcus with the same quiet authority he used on Alara, this time with her standing beside him as an equal. The payoff is the moment the ring stops being a deal and starts meaning something else entirely, a symbol of a forged bond, born from betrayal, that became the only truth either of them has ever known. Ready for next part? Part 1, 1400 words. Part 1. The Gilded Cage. The moment I stepped into the ballroom, I knew I was walking into a trap of my own making. That's the thing about cages. The most beautiful ones are built with gold, not iron. They don't look like cages at all. They look like everything you ever wanted. Crystal chandeliers dripping from a ceiling painted with scenes of heaven. Champagne towers catching the light like liquid diamonds. Women in silk and men in suits that cost more than most people's homes. A string quartet playing something soft and expensive in the corner. And somewhere in this room, Lucian Thorn. I didn't know his face yet. I'd studied photographs, of course. Watched footage of his rare public appearances. Read every interview he'd ever given, which was almost none. Marcus had been thorough in his briefing. Lucian Thorn, he'd said, does not get distracted. Lucian Thorn does not lose focus. Lucian Thorn built an empire from nothing by seeing what everyone else missed. Your job, Alara, is to make him miss something. Easy for Marcus to say from his dirty office across town, counting the money he'd pay me if I succeeded, or the debt he'd collect if I failed. I moved through the crowd like smoke, touching nothing, catching everything. A smile here, a lingering glance there. My dress was deep burgundy, chosen specifically because it would photograph well in a low light but blend into the shadows at the edges of rooms. My hair was pinned up, exposing the line of my neck, because Marcus had read somewhere that men found it distracting. Marcus thought in checklists. He thought in weaknesses and leverage and the weight of what people owed him. He didn't understand that the real art of distraction wasn't about being seen. It was about making someone want to look. I found my team in the usual places. Victor near the east stairwell, posing as security. He had the build for it, the stillness. No one would notice him watching the doors. Lena by the bar, laughing at something a banker said, her hand brushing his arm while her eyes catalogued every exit. Good. Professional. We'd worked together 3 times before. We knew the rhythm. And somewhere above us, in a private vault that supposedly hadn't been opened in 40 years, sat the collection. Art, mostly. Paintings no one had seen since World War II. A few artifacts. But the real prize was small enough to fit in a pocket. A ring. Romanov, they whispered. Not the big famous ones, but something rarer. Something Lucian Thorn had spent 20 years tracking down, and exactly 1 year displaying in his home before moving it here, to this fortress disguised as a museum. Marcus wanted the ring. He wanted to sell it to a buyer in Dubai who wanted to melt it down, erase its history, turn it into something new. He wanted me to keep Lucian Thorn busy while his history disappeared forever. I should have felt something about that. Guilt, maybe. Or the thrill of the game. Instead, I just felt tired. The kind of tired that lives in your bones, not your muscles. The kind that comes from running so long you forget what you're running from. I spotted him at 23 minutes past 8. He wasn't where they said he'd be. The briefing had placed him near the main exhibition hall, greeting donors, playing the role of the gracious host. But Lucian Thorn wasn't greeting anyone. He was standing alone at the edge of the ballroom, half hidden behind a pillar, watching the crowd like a hunter watching prey. And he was watching me. My heart didn't stutter. My breath didn't catch. I'd been doing this too long for that. Instead, I did what I always did. I adapted. I let my gaze slide past him like he was nothing, like I hadn't noticed, and I kept walking toward the bar. A woman alone needs a reason to stand in corners. A drink in her hand is the best excuse. But I felt him. Even with my back turned, I felt the weight of his attention, heavy and precise, like being measured for a cage of my own. 10 minutes later, I risked a glance. Still there. Still watching. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. Men like Lucian Thorne didn't stand in shadows at their own galas. They worked the room. They shook hands and accepted praise and posed for photographs with people who wanted to believe wealth was something you could earn instead of something you were born into. Lucian Thorne was born with nothing. The file said so. Orphan at 12. On the streets by 14. First million by 22. He'd built his empire with his bare hands, and men like that didn't hide behind pillars. Men like that knew exactly where the threats were. I touched the bracelet on my wrist, a signal to Lena. Trouble. Watch my back. She tilted her head, just slightly. Acknowledged. I ordered a glass of water with lime, held it like it was champagne, and started moving toward the east wing. The vault was up there. Victor would need eyes on the corridor. If Lucian was here, watching me, then maybe he wasn't watching his security feeds. Maybe we still had a window. I made it 20 feet before he appeared beside me. I don't believe we've met. His voice was quiet. That was the first surprise. In a room full of people trying to be heard, he spoke like he expected the world to lean in and listen. And it did. I felt the crowd part around us, giving him space, giving him deference. I turned, slow, careful, gave him my best society smile. The one that said I belonged here, that I'd been coming to events like this my whole life, that my presence was as natural as breathing. I think I'd remember, I said. He was taller than the photographs suggested. Or maybe the photographs just couldn't capture the way he occupied space. Not aggressively, not like men who use their bodies to intimidate. He was still, completely still, in a way that made everyone around him seem frantic by comparison. His eyes were dark, almost black in this light, and they missed nothing. Would you? He asked. A small smile, barely there. I'm told I'm quite forgettable. I laughed. It was genuine. Not because he was funny, but because the lie was so absurd, so perfectly wrong, that I couldn't help it. Lucian Thorne was many things. Forgettable wasn't one of them. He tilted his head, watching my laugh like it was data he was collecting. That sounded real, he said. Most of the laughs I hear tonight won't be. Careful. Careful. This man saw too much. Then you're talking to the wrong people, I said, and took a sip of my water. Am I? The question hung between us, innocent and weighted at the same time. I felt the seconds passing. Victor would be in position by now. Lena would be creating her distraction near the west stairwell. Any moment, the alarms would. Your friend, Lucian said, glancing toward the bar where Lena had been standing. The one who was watching me earlier. She's very good. But she checked her watch 3 times in the last minute. That's a tell. In my experience, people only check their watches when they're waiting for something to happen. The world tilted. I kept my face smooth, my posture easy, but inside, everything was collapsing. He knew. He'd known from the beginning. He'd been watching us the way we'd been watching him. I don't know what you mean, I said. No, he agreed. You don't. That's the problem. He stepped closer. Not threatening. Just present. Just real. Close enough that I could smell something clean and expensive, cedar and something darker. Close enough that I could see the exhaustion hidden behind his eyes, the weight of whatever had made him this still, this watchful, this impossible to fool. I've been waiting for someone to try this, he said. 6 months since I moved the collection here. 6 months of galas and parties and charity events, waiting to see who would come. I expected professionals. I expected guns, maybe. Violence. The usual. His eyes held mine. I didn't expect you. The first alarm blared from somewhere above us. High and sharp and final. Victor. They'd caught Victor. Or Lena. Or both. My team, my people, the only family I had left in the world, and they were gone. I turned to run. It was instinct. Survival. The same instinct that had kept me alive for 15 years on the streets, in the shadows, in the spaces between right and wrong. But Lucian's hand closed around my wrist. Not hard. Not painful. Just enough to stop me. "There's nowhere to go," he said. "My people have the exits. Your friends are already in custody. And you." He paused, studying me with that terrible stillness. "You have exactly two choices. You can run, and spend the next 10 years in a federal prison. Or you can come with me, and we'll talk about another option." I should have fought. I should have run. I should have done anything except stand there, frozen, watching the alarms flash red against the crystal chandeliers, watching my carefully constructed life shatter into pieces at my feet. But I didn't move. Because in his eyes, underneath the authority and the control and the quiet, terrible power, I saw something I didn't expect. I saw a man who had been waiting for something too. He didn't drag me. That was the thing I couldn't stop thinking about, even as my heart hammered against my ribs and my mind raced through every exit, every possibility, every desperate plan that might still save us. He didn't drag me. He didn't grip my arm or threaten me or call for security. He simply turned and walked toward the east staircase, and he trusted that I would follow. The worst part? I did. The ballroom had descended into beautiful chaos. Women clutched their pearls. Men spoke in urgent whispers into phones. Security personnel moved in quiet formation, herding guests away from the East Wing, away from whatever had happened up there. No one looked at me. No one saw the woman in burgundy walking calmly beside Lucian Thorne, as if she belonged there, as if this was exactly where she was supposed to be. That was his power, I realized. Not money. Not influence. It was the absolute certainty he projected, the way reality seemed to bend around him, making his choices feel inevitable. We climbed 2 flights of stairs. The noise faded. The carpet turned from gold to deep crimson. The walls held paintings I'd only ever seen in books, originals worth more than I'd make in 20 lifetimes, and he didn't even glance at them. He stopped outside a door at the end of the hall. Unmarked. Wood paneling that matched the walls. Invisible, unless you knew what you were looking for. He opened it and gestured for me to enter. I hesitated. "If I were going to hurt you," he said, "I would have done it downstairs, in front of everyone. It would have made a better statement." I wanted to argue. I wanted to run. Instead, I walked through the door. His private study was nothing like the rest of the building. No gold. No crystal. No pretense. Just walls lined with books, a desk that looked like it had been built 100 years ago, and a single window overlooking the city. The alarms were distant here, muffled, like a storm happening to someone else. He closed the door behind us. And then he waited. I'd been in rooms with powerful men before. Marcus. His associates. Men who collected debts with broken bones and men who collected secrets with threats. They all had tells. Tapping fingers. Pacing. The need to fill silence with words, with threats, with the weight of their own importance. Lucian Thorne simply stood there, watching me, and let the silence do his work. I broke first. Of course I did. I was the one with everything to lose. What happened to my team? Safe. For now. He moved to the desk, didn't sit, just leaned against it. Your friend Victor put up a fight. Broke a guard's nose. Impressive, but foolish. Your other friend, Lena, she surrendered immediately. Smart woman. Where are they? That depends on you. I laughed. It came out wrong, too sharp, too desperate. Let me guess. You'll let them go if I cooperate. If I tell you who sent us. If I give up Marcus. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or respect. Marcus, he repeated. I wondered if it was him. He's been circling my periphery for years. Never bold enough to strike. Until now. You knew. I suspected. He pushed off the desk, moved toward the window. The city lights stretched beneath him. Millions of lives he could probably see from here. Millions of people who would never know his name. The ring is valuable. But it's not valuable enough to justify the risk of a heist like this. Not unless someone wanted it for reasons beyond money. I said nothing. I'd learned that lesson young. When you don't know the game, don't show your cards. He turned to face me. The light from the window caught his profile, and for a moment he looked almost young, almost tired, like a man carrying something heavier than empires. Marcus doesn't want to sell the ring, he said. He wants to destroy it. He wants to erase the one piece of evidence that connects him to a deal he made 20 years ago. A deal that left 17 people dead in a warehouse fire in Odessa. The name hit me like a physical blow. Odessa. I'd heard it whispered in dark rooms, in the spaces between Marcus's commands. A job gone wrong. A fire that wasn't an accident. Bodies that were never identified, never returned to families, never mourned properly because no one knew they were gone. 17 people. My hands started shaking. I pressed them flat against my thighs, willed them to stop. You didn't know, Lucian said. Not a question. I knew Marcus was dangerous. I didn't know. I stopped. Swallowed. 17. Workers in a warehouse. He was supposed to steal artifacts, not burn them. But something went wrong. Someone recognized him. He made a choice. Lucian's voice was flat, clinical, but underneath it I heard something else. Grief, maybe. Or guilt. One of those workers was my sister. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of a chair, steadied myself. His sister. The orphan from the file. The boy who built an empire with his bare hands. He'd been hunting Marcus for 20 years, and Marcus had sent me straight to him. I didn't know, I whispered. I swear to you, I didn't know. I believe you. Simple. Certain. He believed me, and somehow that was worse than if he'd accused me, because it meant he saw me clearly. He saw the woman I really was, not the mask I wore, and he wasn't disgusted. He was offering me a way out. The ring, I said. It's evidence. The only physical proof that Marcus was there. His fingerprints on a display case. His blood on a broken window. He spent 2 decades trying to find it, destroy it, bury the last witness to his crime. Lucian moved closer. Not threatening. Just present. I spent 2 decades making sure he couldn't. But he found out it was here. He found out someone was protecting it. He didn't know it was me. A ghost of a smile. Until tonight. The alarms had stopped. I hadn't noticed. The silence in the room was complete now, heavy with everything unspoken between us. What happens now? I asked. That depends entirely on you. He reached into his pocket. When his hand emerged, something small caught the light. A ring. Not flashy, not obviously valuable. Old gold, worn smooth by time. A single stone, deep red, like blood frozen in glass. The Romanov ring. The evidence. The thing 17 people died for. I could turn you over to the police, he said. You'd serve time. Not as much as Marcus, but enough. Years of your life, gone. And when you got out, he'd find you. He always finds people who fail him. I knew this was true. I'd seen it happen. Or, Lucian continued, you could help me. You know Marcus. You know his patterns, his people, his weaknesses. You could give me what I need to finally end this. And in exchange, he held up the ring. Not threatening. Not offering. Just showing me what was at stake. In exchange, I make sure Marcus never touches you again. I erase whatever hold he has on you. Debt, fear, guilt, all of it. Gone. You walk away clean, with enough money to start over anywhere in the world. It was everything I'd ever wanted. Freedom. Safety. A chance to be someone else, someone who hadn't done the things I'd done, hadn't survived the way I'd survived. But I'd been running long enough to know that offers like this always had a catch. What's the catch? He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different. Softer. Almost vulnerable. My world is built on control. On never showing weakness, never giving anyone leverage. For 20 years, I've been the man who sees everything, who anticipates every move, who never gets distracted. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw the exhaustion beneath the authority. The loneliness. If I simply hire you, Marcus will wonder why. He'll investigate. He'll find connections I can't afford him to find. So what are you suggesting? He held up the ring again. Then he did something that made my heart stop. He slipped it onto my finger. It fit perfectly. Like it had been waiting for me. Like I'd been waiting for it, my whole life, without knowing. We give him a reason, Lucian said. A reason that makes sense. A reason so obvious, so human, that he'll never question it. My throat was dry. What reason? He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Hope. Desperation. The same longing I'd been running from my whole life. You wear the ring, he said. And you play the role of the woman who distracted me so completely that I forgot to guard my greatest treasure. The woman who, I couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't let myself believe what he was suggesting. My fiancé, Lucian Thorne said quietly. You pretend to love me. And in return, I'll give you everything you've never had. The ring felt warm against my skin. Heavy. Real. I should have said no. I should have run. I should have done anything except stand there, frozen, watching this man offer me a cage that looked exactly like freedom. But I didn't move. Because underneath the terror, underneath the impossibility of it all, something else stirred. Something I'd buried so deep I'd forgotten it existed. Curiosity. About him. About what it would feel like to stop running. About the man who'd spent 20 years hunting justice for his sister, and the woman who'd spent 20 years hunting nothing at all. What's your name? He asked. Your real name. I opened my mouth to give him the lie. The name on my fake ID, the one Marcus knew, the one I'd been using for years. Instead, I told him the truth. Elara. He nodded, like he'd known it all along. Like he'd been waiting for me to remember it too. Elara, he repeated. Soft. Careful. Like it was something precious. And in that moment, standing in a stranger's study with a dead woman's ring on my finger and my whole life collapsing around me, I realized the truth. I wasn't afraid of him. 3 days later, I stood in a penthouse that cost more than every building I'd ever lived in combined, wearing a dress I didn't choose, waiting for a man I didn't understand. The ring was still on my finger. I hadn't taken it off. Not because I wanted it, not because I believed any of this was real, but because every time I looked at it, I remembered why I was here. 17 people. His sister. Marcus's crimes written in blood and fire. And me, somehow, standing in the middle of it all. Lucian hadn't spoken to me since the gala. His people had handled everything. An apartment. Clothes. A new phone with only one number programmed in. 3 meals a day delivered by someone who never met my eyes. I was a prisoner in silk sheets, and the worst part was how comfortable it was. I'd spent my whole life running. I didn't know what to do with stillness. The door opened at exactly 7 o'clock. Lucian walked in wearing the same suit he'd worn at the gala, slightly rumpled, like he hadn't slept. Dark circles under his eyes. The same terrible stillness in his movements. He looked at me the way he looked at everything, like he was cataloguing data, searching for threats, finding none. The dress suits you, he said. My jailer has good taste. Something flickered in his eyes. Not quite a smile. You're not a prisoner, Elara. You can leave anytime. Can I? The question hung between us. We both knew the answer. If I walked out that door, Marcus would find me. The police would find me. My old life would swallow me whole, and this time there'd be no escape. Lucian moved to the window, his back to me. The city glittered below, indifferent to whatever happened in this room. Marcus contacted me this morning. My heart stuttered. What did he want? His property back. Lucian's voice was flat. He claims you belong to him. That you've been his for 7 years, that he owns your debt, that any arrangement between us is invalid without his consent. I'd heard Marcus say those words before, usually to other people, other terrified souls who'd made the mistake of borrowing from him. I'd never imagined hearing them applied to me. He doesn't own me, I said. Quiet. Fierce. No. He doesn't. Lucian turned to face me. But he believes he does. And belief, in cases like this, is almost as dangerous as fact. What did you tell him? I told him the truth. He moved closer. Not threatening. Just present. I told him you'd distracted me so thoroughly that I'd forgotten about the ring entirely. That I'd spent the night of the gala chasing you instead of guarding my vault. That I was embarrassed, amused, intrigued. That I wanted to see you again. And he believed you. He wanted to believe me. Lucian's mouth curved. Men like Marcus want the world to make sense. A beautiful woman distracts a lonely man. The lonely man falls. It's the oldest story in the world. Easier to accept than the truth. Which was that Lucian had planned this from the beginning. That he'd been waiting for Marcus to make a move. That I was a pawn in a game 20 years in the making. I should have been angry. I should have felt used, manipulated, reduced to a role I never asked to play. Instead, I felt something worse. I felt useful. He wants proof, Lucian continued. Photographs. Appearances. The kind of public performance that convinces people who need convincing. He wants to see us together, playing the parts he's already imagined. And if we don't, then he'll assume we are working against him. He'll disappear. The ring will stay safe, but he'll spend the rest of his life hunting both of us. He'll never stop. Men like Marcus don't know how. I thought about that. About spending the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. About the weight of 20 years of running, 20 years of never being still, never being safe, never being anything except prey. And if we do? I asked. If we play these parts? What happens then? Lucian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different. Softer. Almost honest. Then we draw him out. We make him believe he's won, that the ring is lost to him, that you've chosen my side over his. We make him desperate. And desperate men make mistakes. And when he makes a mistake, then I end this. 20 years of hunting, 20 years of carrying my sister's memory, 20 years of waiting, all of it ends. And you walk away clean. It sounded so simple. So clean. So impossible. There's something you're not telling me, I said. He didn't deny it. Didn't deflect. Just watched me with those dark eyes, waiting. You could have chosen anyone for this. Any woman. Professional actresses. People who do this for a living. But you chose me. Someone who tried to rob you. Someone with nothing to lose. Why? The silence stretched. Became heavy. Became something else entirely. Because you're the first person in 20 years who looked at me and didn't see what they expected to see. His voice was raw. Unprotected. Like he'd reached inside himself and pulled out something he'd been hiding for decades. At the gala, when you first saw me, you didn't flinch. You didn't smile too wide or laugh too loud or try to impress me. You just looked. Like I was a person, not a prize. Like I was worth seeing, not just owning. I remembered that moment. The weight of his attention. The way I'd felt exposed and seen at the same time. That's not a reason to trust me. No. It's a reason to hope. He moved closer, close enough that I could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight of 20 years of solitude. I've been alone for a very long time, Alara. Surrounded by people, but alone. I'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen. Until you. My throat tightened. I wanted to say something clever, something distancing, something that would rebuild the walls between us. Instead, I asked the question I'd been avoiding since the gala. What was her name? Your sister. He flinched. Just slightly. Just enough. Irina. Tell me about her. He stopped. Swallowed. For the first time since I'd met him, Lucian Thorne looked uncertain. No one's asked me that in years. Then it's time someone did. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he moved to the couch, sat down heavily, like the weight of memory was too much to carry standing up. I sat across from him, close enough to see his hands tremble, just slightly. She was 12 when I last saw her. 12 years old, with braids she hated and a laugh that filled rooms. She wanted to be a doctor. Can you imagine? A girl from nothing, from nowhere, dreaming of saving lives. His voice cracked. She was working at that warehouse because I told her to. Because I'd found a job, a real job, and I thought she'd be safer there than on the streets with me. I thought I was protecting her. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Just let him carry the weight of it, the same way he'd let me carry mine. She died thinking I'd abandoned her. Thinking I'd chosen money over her, success over her, my own survival over hers. She died alone in a fire, scared and hurt and believing her brother didn't love her enough to come back. His hands were fists now, white-knuckled, trembling, and Marcus lit the match. The silence that followed was the heaviest thing I'd ever felt. 20 years of guilt. 20 years of grief. 20 years of hunting a man who'd taken everything, and still, it wasn't enough to bring her back. I did something I hadn't done in years. I reached out and took his hand. He looked up, startled, vulnerable, like no one had touched him gently in decades. I know what it's like, I said quietly. To carry something so heavy you forget what lightness feels like. To run so long you forget there's anywhere to stop. Elara. I'll play your fiancé. I'll wear this ring and smile for cameras and make Marcus believe whatever you need him to believe. But I won't do it for freedom. I won't do it for money. His eyes searched mine. Then why? Because 17 people died in that fire. Because your sister never got to be a doctor. Because someone should have stopped Marcus years ago, and no one did. I squeezed his hand. Because you looked at me like I was a person, and I'd forgotten what that felt like too. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then, slowly, carefully, Lucian raised his free hand and touched my face. Just his fingertips, just for a second. Like he was checking if I was real. You understand, he whispered, that this changes everything. If we do this, if we play these parts, the lines will blur. The performance will feel real. And when it's over. Don't, I said. Don't borrow trouble. We don't know what happens when it's over. We don't know anything except right now. He nodded, dropped his hand. But he didn't let go of mine. Outside, the city glittered. Inside, two broken people sat in the silence, holding onto each other like anchors in a storm. The ring on my finger caught the light. And for the first time in 7 years, I didn't want to run. We stood on the steps of a museum, the same museum where I tried to rob him, and Lucian's hand rested on the small of my back like it had always belonged there. Flashbulbs exploded around us. Reporters shouted questions I couldn't hear over the rushing in my ears. And through it all, he was still. Completely still. The only calm thing in a storm of chaos. I learned something that day about power. It isn't loud. It isn't aggressive. It's the ability to stand completely still while the world spins around you, and to make everyone believe that your stillness is the only thing keeping them grounded. 3 weeks passed. Then 4. Then 2 months. We played our parts perfectly. Dinners at restaurants where photographers waited outside. Galas where I wore dresses he'd chosen, diamonds he'd lent me, smiles I'd perfected over years of pretending to be someone else. Interviews where we sat close, touched often, looked at each other like people in love were supposed to look. But it was the moments between performances that undid me. The way he remembered how I took my coffee. The way he left books on my nightstand, books he thought I'd like, books he'd read himself and marked with notes in the margins. The way he sat across from me at breakfast, reading the newspaper, and occasionally looked up just to check that I was still there. Like he couldn't quite believe I was real. Like he'd been alone so long that my presence was a miracle he was waiting to disappear. One night, 3 months in, I woke to find him standing on the terrace, staring at the city. It was 3 in the morning. He was still in his clothes from the day, shirt untucked, hair disheveled. Human. Real. Nothing like the man in the photographs. I grabbed a blanket from the couch and joined him. You don't sleep, I said. Neither do you. It wasn't an accusation. Just an observation. The kind of thing people said when they'd stopped pretending. I draped the blanket over both of us, a small intimacy that felt bigger than it should have. He tensed, then relaxed. Let me close. Tell me, I said. What wakes you up? He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, the fire. Just 2 words. They held everything. I dream about it sometimes. Not the flames. I never saw the flames. I dream about the silence after. The way the world kept turning, kept breathing, kept living, while she was gone. The unfairness of it. His voice was rough. And I dream about Marcus. About what I'll do when I finally have him. I'd heard that tone before. In men who'd spent years hunting revenge. It was hungry. Dangerous. Capable of consuming everything, including the hunter. Is that still what you want? I asked carefully. Revenge. I want justice. Is there a difference? He turned to look at me. In the low light, his eyes were endless. Full of things he'd never said, never shown anyone. I don't know anymore, he admitted. For 20 years, I thought they were the same thing. I thought if I could make him pay, if I could make him suffer the way my sister suffered, it would balance something. It would bring me peace. And now I'm not sure peace exists. He looked down at his hands. I'm not sure I'd recognize it if I found it. The wind picked up, cold against my skin. I pulled the blanket tighter, felt him shift closer, sharing warmth without asking. What would Irina want? I asked. He flinched. The question hit harder than any accusation could. I don't. He stopped. Swallowed. She was 12. She was a child. She wouldn't have understood any of this. The hunting, the waiting, the 20 years of my life I've given to this. Maybe she'd understand more than you think. He looked at me. Waiting. Children see things clearly, I said. Before we teach them to want the wrong things. Before we teach them that revenge matters more than peace, that winning matters more than being whole. Maybe she'd just won her brother back. The one who loved her. The one who's been lost for 20 years. Something broke in his face. Just for a second. Just enough for me to see it. I don't know who that is anymore. I reached up and touched his face. The same way he touched mine, months ago, in that first conversation. Checking if he was real. Maybe it's time to find out. He didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stood there, in the cold, with my hand on his cheek and the city spread out beneath us like a promise. And then, slowly, carefully, he turned his face into my palm. Closed his eyes. Breathed. Like he'd been holding his breath for 20 years and finally remembered how to let go. I don't know who moved first. Maybe we both did. But suddenly his arms were around me, and mine were around him, and we were holding onto each other like the only solid things in a world that had spent decades trying to break us. No performance. No cameras. No audience. Just 2 people. Just the truth. Alara, he whispered into my hair. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be anything except the man who's hunting Marcus. I don't know how to want something else. Then learn, I whispered back. We'll learn together. We stayed on that terrace until the sun came up. Talking about nothing. Talking about everything. His childhood on the streets. Mine in foster homes that felt like prisons. The small dreams we'd buried so deep we'd forgotten they existed. The people we might have been, if the world had been kinder. And somewhere in that long, slow dawn, the lines blurred completely. The performance became real. Or maybe it had always been real, and we'd just been too afraid to admit it. The next week, Marcus made his move. He sent a message through one of his people. A photograph. Lena, bound to a chair, her face bruised but her eyes still fierce. Still fighting. Still alive. And a note, return what's mine, or she burns the same way the others did. I found Lucian in his study, staring at the photograph. His face was carved from stone. The man from the terrace, the one who'd held me in the dark, was gone. In his place stood the hunter. The avenger. The man who'd spent 20 years waiting for this moment. He wants the ring, Lucian said. He wants you. He wants me to watch while he takes everything, the same way I've had to watch for 20 years. What are you going to do? He looked at me, and in his eyes, I saw war. The hunter wanted to burn the world down. The man I'd held on the terrace wanted to protect what he'd finally found. I don't know, he said. And I heard the truth in it. The terrible, honest truth of someone torn between the past and the future, between revenge and love, between the person he'd been and the person he was becoming. I walked to him, took his face in my hands, made him look at me. Then we figure it out together. We could lose everything. We could. I nodded. Or we could finally win. Not the way you've been fighting. A different way. A better way. How? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. But standing there, with his hands on my waist and his eyes searching mine, I realized something. I wasn't afraid. For the first time in 7 years, I wasn't running. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was exactly where I belonged. We beat him, I said slowly, by being what he can't understand. By being real. By being together. By giving him something he's never seen and can't predict. Lucian frowned. What's that? I smiled. It felt strange on my face. Hopeful. Us. The word hung between us, heavy with meaning. Us. Not me against him. Not us against the world. Just us. Together. Real. He pulled me closer. Pressed his forehead to mine. If this goes wrong, then it goes wrong. But we go wrong together. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then he kissed me. Soft. Careful. Like I was something precious. Like he'd been waiting his whole life to do it. When we pulled apart, the photograph of Lena was still on his desk. Marcus was still out there. The danger was still real. But so were we. We met Marcus on a Thursday night in a warehouse on the edge of the city. Not his choice. Ours. Lucian had spent 48 hours dismantling every piece of Marcus's world. Shell companies frozen. Safe houses raided. Associates flipping like fish in a barrel, desperate to save themselves from the storm they saw coming. By the time Wednesday night arrived, Marcus had nothing left except his rage and his desperation and his absolute certainty that he was still in control. That was his weakness, Lucian had explained. Not greed. Not cruelty. Certainty. The unshakable belief that he was the smartest person in any room, that everyone else was playing checkers while he played chess. People who are that certain don't see the trap until it's too late. The warehouse was cold. Abandoned. The kind of place where deals went wrong and people disappeared. Fitting, I thought, for the ending of a man who'd made his living from both. Lena was already there when we arrived. Tied to a chair in the center of the room, her face bruised but her eyes defiant. Alive. Still fighting. When she saw me walk in with Lucian, something flickered in her expression. Confusion. Hope. Fear. I wanted to run to her. Instead, I stayed close to Lucian, let him lead, let him set the pace. We'd planned this. Every word. Every step. Every moment. Marcus emerged from the shadows like a spider sensing movement in its web. He looked smaller than I remembered. Older. The years of running, of hiding, of waiting for someone to find him had carved lines into his face that hadn't been there when I'd worked for him. His eyes were the same, though. Cold. Empty. The eyes of someone who'd long ago stopped seeing other people as anything except tools. Alara. He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. I knew you'd come. Loyalty was always your weakness. Loyalty, I repeated. Is that what you call it? What else would you call 7 years of service? I didn't answer. Let him wonder. Let him fill the silence with his own assumptions. His gaze shifted to Lucian. The smile widened. And the great Lucian Thorn. I have to admit, I didn't see this coming. The hunter, brought low by a pretty face. How human of you. Lucian said nothing. Just stood there, still as stone, watching Marcus the way a cat watches a cornered mouse. The ring, Marcus said. Give it to me, and I'll let the girl go. We'll call it even. You can keep the woman. She's clearly more trouble than she's worth anyway. Lucian reached into his pocket. When his hand emerged, the ring caught the dim light. Old gold. Red stone. 20 years of history wrapped around his fingers. Marcus's eyes locked onto it. Hungry. Desperate. So close to everything he'd spent 2 decades chasing. Throw it, Marcus said. Slowly. On the floor between us. Lucian looked at me. Just for a second. Just long enough for Marcus to miss it. Then he tossed the ring. It arced through the air, caught the light one last time, and landed on the concrete with a soft clink. Marcus lunged for it. And the lights came on. Floodlights. Dozens of them. Hidden in the rafters, along the walls, everywhere. The warehouse turned from shadow to daylight in an instant. Marcus froze, one hand outstretched toward the ring, his face caught in an expression of pure, animal shock. Federal agents poured through every entrance. Marcus didn't run. Didn't fight. Just stood there, blinking in the sudden brightness, watching his world collapse around him. I moved to Lena while the agents swarmed. Pulled the ropes from her wrists. Held her while she shook. Whispered that it was over, really over, that Marcus would never touch anyone again. She looked at me with eyes that held too many questions. I didn't have answers yet. Not for her. Not for myself. An agent approached Lucian. Older man, grey hair, tired eyes. They shook hands like old acquaintances. You got him, the agent said. We got him, Lucian agreed. 20 years. I wasn't sure we'd ever see this day. Neither was I. The agent looked past Lucian, found me watching. Nodded once. Respect, maybe. Or acknowledgement of a role played well. Then he turned back to Marcus, who was finally finding his voice, finally starting to scream about lawyers and rights and how this wasn't over, couldn't be over. He was Marcus, he was untouchable. No one listened. They never do. 2 hours later, Lena was in an ambulance, wrapped in blankets, giving statements to agents who treated her like a victim instead of a criminal. Victor was somewhere in the city, being released from the holding cell where Marcus had put him. The others would surface eventually. The ones who'd survived. The ones who'd been smart enough to run before the fire. And I was alone with Lucian on the roof of the warehouse, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. He was quiet. I'd learned to read his silences by now. This one wasn't heavy. Wasn't burdened. It was something else. Something lighter. What happens now? I asked. I don't know. It was the most honest answer he could have given. The case would take years. Trials, appeals, testimony. Marcus would fight until his last breath. But the evidence was overwhelming. The ring alone would put him away for the rest of his life. 17 deaths. 20 years of hunting. It was over. So why did it feel like something was just beginning? The ring, I said. It's really evidence. Part of it. There's more. Documents. Recordings. Witnesses who were too afraid to come forward until now. He paused. I've been building this case for 2 decades. Tonight was just the final piece. I thought about that. About the weight of carrying something for 20 years. About what it meant to finally set it down. What do you feel? I asked. Now that it's done. He considered the question carefully. That was so like him. The way he approached everything like it deserved his full attention. Empty, he said finally. Not in a bad way. Just empty. Like I've been carrying something so long I forgot what it felt like without it. And now I have to learn how to walk again. I know that feeling. He turned to look at me. The city lights caught his face, softened the edges, made him look almost young. What about you? He asked. What do you feel? I thought about Lena, safe in that ambulance. About Victor, finally free. About the 7 years I'd spent running for Marcus, doing things I wasn't proud of, becoming someone I didn't recognize. I feel like I might finally stop running. He nodded. Like he understood. Like he'd been waiting for me to say it. We stood there for a long time. Not touching. Not talking. Just present. Just real. Finally, he reached into his pocket and pulled something out. Small. Gold. Catching the light. The ring. I thought. I stopped. The evidence. There's more than one way to prove a case. He held it out to me. This one belongs to you. I stared at it. The ring that had started everything. The ring that 17 people died for. The ring that had brought us together in a ballroom full of lies. Lucian. It's not a deal anymore. His voice was quiet. Careful. Like he was offering me something fragile. It's not a performance. It's not part of the plan. It's just this. Me. Asking you to stay. My throat tightened. Stay. Not because you owe me. Not because Marcus is a threat. Not because of any of the reasons that brought us here. He stepped closer. Close enough to touch. Stay because you want to. Stay because whatever this is between us, it's the only real thing I've felt in 20 years. Stay because I don't know who I am without the hunt, but I'd rather figure it out with you than alone. I looked at the ring in his palm. Then at his face. Open. Vulnerable. Terrified. The man who'd spent 20 years building walls had let me see through every single one. Ask me properly, I whispered. He almost smiled. Almost. Elara. He said my name like a prayer. Will you stay? I reached out. Not for the ring. For his hand. I wrapped my fingers around his, felt him tremble, felt the weight of everything we'd been through settle between us like a promise. Yes. He slipped the ring onto my finger. Same finger as before. Same weight. Same warmth. But this time, it meant something different. This time, it was ours. The city glittered below us. The sirens faded in the distance. Somewhere in the chaos, Marcus was being processed and photographed and locked away where he could never hurt anyone again. And here, on this rooftop, two broken people held onto each other and dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd found something worth staying for. Lucian kissed me. Soft. Real. Full of everything we hadn't said and didn't need to. When we pulled apart, I looked at the ring on my finger. It had started as a trap. Become a bargain. Turned into a performance. Now it was just what it was. A circle. No beginning. No end. Like us. Like whatever came next. The end.